Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Starting a Counseling Practice podcast with Zinni. I'm Miranda Palmer, one of the therapists here and one of your hosts. And we have a special treat for you today. We have the amazing Barbara Griswold from Navigating the Insurance Maze here to talk and share a little bit about a subject that probably brings you a significant amount of anxiety. And because it does bring us anxiety, often it can lead us to shut down and actually put us at more risk. So our goal today is to help lessen the anxiety a little bit so that you can be more aware and present, so that you can be more protected, so that your clients can be more protected. And so we can kind of demystify this juicy little topic of insurance audits. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Barbara, do you want to say hello and share your web address for people who are hopping on?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Barbara Griswold. I am author of Navigating the Insurance Maze, the therapist's complete guide to working with insurance and whether you should. And that is now out in its 9th edition. And my web address is theinsurancemaze.com. And you are welcome to contact me through that. I also have a blog, basically, which is what every therapist should know about insurance, and not underline every therapist, not just those of you who work with insurance. And please get on my mailing list so you can be alerted to all kinds of changes in the insurance world that impact you and your clients.
And let me be clear, I'm actually on maybe three therapist newsletters that I read religiously, I read consistently, and yours is one of them. Nice. Really, truly, there's always great information. It's always information I'm passing on. I counsel my coaching clients to be on as few emails as possible, just because it's too easy to get overwhelmed and then shut down. And yours is one of them that I'm you need to be on this newsletter. You're so incredibly informative, so connected. Anyway, so thanks. Check out, get on the newsletter if you're not there. It's worth it. I would even say our newsletter is amazing, but our newsletter is optional. If you already have your private practice where you want it, you love it, ours is optional, Barbara's is not, period.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Thanks for that. I didn't pay her for that, but I'll send you $500 afterwards.
You could just you could cut it out and put it on your testimonial on your website. Oh my goodness. Okay, so let's talk about we're gonna have you down for a training, but also we know that we had so many people order register for this training about insurance audits and how to protect yourself and your clients, how to prepare for them, because they happen. Whether you're an insurance contracted provider or not, you are going to get a request at some point in your career. If you haven't already, if you already have, you're going to get more. This is just part of the current doing business experience. You're going to experience that. And we're struggling because there's actually almost 5,000 people who've already registered for the free training that we're doing on July 20th of 2023. And so we're struggling to figure out if we have a platform where we can accommodate everybody. But if you can come, if you're already registered, or if you're not, go check it out, zinni.com/free to come live. But we're going to try to give you little base information today, regardless of if you can come. Because this is really, really important. So, Barbara, what is an audit? What does that actually mean?
So yeah, this is a very misunderstood term. There's a lot of disinformation out there, fake news about audits. I guess the first thing I want to say is that we constantly hear our colleagues saying, I got audited, oh my God, the sky is falling. I want to say about 1 to 5%, and I'm just making up numbers, are probably an actual scary audit. The rest are either not audits at all. There's some kind of a clinical review, which we can talk about the difference. They are some kind of a statistical review that has no bearing on you. They're not looking at you. I would say most of them have nothing to do with you at all. And most of them have nothing to do, like they're not calling you out. Yet also most of us take them wildly personally. I get calls all the time, whereas I think I got audited because one person today said, because I made a referral for couples therapy. I'm like, no, this has nothing to do with that. Or I know why, because because this client is difficult. 99% of the time that has nothing to do with it. You were randomly selected. So one of the things I just want to tell everyone is don't panic if you get a request for records. First, as Miranda said, they're very much a portion of doing business as a therapist. This is just something you're going to experience. Probably one survey I did, and 80% of the therapists said they had already gotten one. And to the other 20%, I would say, your turn is next. So it's not a matter of if you're going to get a record request, it's like when. So don't panic if you get one. That's just, hey, I'm a therapist. Yay. This is the part I don't like. But most of them, the point I try to make is they're not like bees with a sting. They're most like gnats that are an irritation. They're just kind of buzzing around and you got to deal with them. But most of them don't have any bite to them. So, I mean, I could talk about the different types of audits and which ones you need to be nervous about. But again, something that you just have to know up front is that most of them have no consequence for you. And you can just be like, breathe when you get them, like, oh, this is an annoyance. This is going to take a little time to respond to. But in many, many cases, you don't even have to send the records, even when they request them. So that's an interesting little point for some of them.
I love that space of shifting the viewpoint from a records request from an insurance company or an external organization as it being something dangerous to it possibly just being an annoyance, and not seeing all requests the same, being able to like really pause and like read through the request, really like read through it.
I have people who schedule a consultation with me. They wait 2 weeks to see me. They get there and I'll say, okay, do you have the records request in front of you? And they'll either say no, or I'll say, what did it say? And they'll say, I don't know. I was too scared to open it, or I opened it, I saw it was a records request and I didn't read it. I was too terrified. So our level of anxiety is just through the roof about these things. And it keeps us, as you said at the beginning, from even taking in information and making good decisions about it. So although this person made a great decision, which is reach out for help and help me understand what kind this is. So I am available for that. And that's what I tell you, reach out to your professional association, reach out to me. Unfortunately, some professional associations know better than others. Sometimes they hear the word audit and they go right to helping you with a kind of audit, which it might not be. But definitely reach out to me and I will tell you, have the letter in front of you, send me a copy and I will write back to you and say, this is not one you need to be concerned about. This is this, or this is that. So
I love that. I think there's also something about this that it really taps into, which is, and it's kind of connected to the issue of subpoenas as well, is that we have a lot of anxiety about what is in our documentation. Like at the core of this, there's a lot of fear because, oh wait, I'm well behind on those notes. I haven't been doing those notes. Like I don't know if I've done good notes. Like there's all this stuff that's related to documentation that makes us equally afraid of audits, of record requests, of subpoenas, because it's all these things where somebody's seeing something that I'm going to say it, and I know you don't like when I say it this way, but for a lot of therapists, they see their documentation as like their secret shame. Like they know that like what they're doing with the clients is like on board.
Absolutely.
They also know that like their documentation or they have a sense that their documentation does not reflect what they do with clients.
Absolutely. And the only good thing I would say about these audits, or any kind of, we're just going to use that term in place of records requests for today, but any kind of records request is that sometimes it makes people stop and say, okay, my documentation has been out of control. I know it's not good, or I haven't been keeping up with it, or I don't keep any. Some people, I've had calls where I haven't taken a note in 2 years, or I'm behind my 2 years for my notes. You get one of those records requests, and sometimes it makes you say, you know what, I need to deal with this, and I need to start taking different kinds of notes. And please tell me, Barbara, what insurance plans want to see. So it kind of forces you to address that secret shame, which no, there's a ton of shame around our notes. But what I always say is, we feel so much shame, but it makes no sense, because it's like we never were trained to do these. So it's like expecting me to speak French when I never took a French lesson, right?
Yes.
So why would I feel ashamed about not being able to speak French when I never enrolled in French class and nobody taught it to me? So I don't think we should expect ourselves to know what to go in notes. I do think we all need to expect ourselves to learn.
Yeah.
And right now we are, if you are operating with an insurance company, or if your clients are submitting super bills, you need to step up and learn what should be in your notes. But even if you don't deal with insurance, my argument is you could be sued by a client. Your client could file an ethics committee complaint or a licensing board complaint. Your notes have to be stellar and wonderful in a way that protects you and that describes the services you provided. And they're not your private little diary. They are your client's medical record, and a client can request their medical record at any time. So we always need to be keeping our notes in a way that we would feel no discomfort handing them over to the ethics committee or the licensing board. So, you know, I don't want to get too far off topic, but the bottom line, as you say, is this very connected with how we feel about our notes. And if you can feel really good about your notes, then if you get audited, you're kind of like, oh, well, this is an irritation, but I feel really good about my notes. So go for it.
I think it's interesting too. Like you mentioned the idea that like, hey, it's like speaking French and no one ever taught me to speak French. I think also sometimes people learn note taking, let's say that was in, coming up the idea of German, which is kind of funny in terms of like working with an agency or working at the county and having a style of notes that was necessary for this organization.
Right.
And the style of notes where they're like, this isn't helpful at all. And then sort of as a backlash against that going, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to spend 20 minutes on each 50-minute session doing documentation.
Right.
And so this idea that it's okay to realize, yes, maybe you do have some experience of the language of an agency or county or Medi-Cal or Medicaid billing. It's okay to say, you know what I'm doing in private practice, it does look different. It should look different. There are some things I want to pull from there. But I need to do this in a sustainable way, right? Like this needs to look different. Right. I think the other thing that's related to that a lot of us really struggle with in private practice is that we have really unrealistic expectations of ourselves. So we are scheduling clients back to back. We're going over on every session.
Yes.
We're seeing way too many clients per week.
Yes.
And then we're so emotionally and physiologically exhausted. The idea, like I've been there at the end of a session, at the end of the day, looking at a pair of notes and my eyes are crossing.
Yep. And
just this space of, am I really being honest about integrating in documentation as part of how I'm really charging? Like, what does this really look like in terms of my caseload? Maybe I can see 28 people per week. Maybe you can. I couldn't see 28 trauma people. Maybe you can, maybe you could. But maybe you can only do that if you don't document one single person. If you're doing good documentation, maybe that's 15, maybe that's 18. Like, what is your number? You need to understand.
You are professionally required to document. You are keeping a client's medical record. So if I had to sit myself down at one point because I was getting so behind in my notes, I was getting so burned out, I was feeling that stressor of that hanging over my head every night. I was bringing note type home. I'd go home, I'd eat dinner with my family, and then I'd be doing notes way into the night, and it was just getting ridiculous. And I finally had to sit myself down and do a little self-therapy and say, exactly what you're saying. You have set up a schedule that does not allow time to take notes. And so you are going to go you need to change something here. And I basically cut out an hour of therapy in the evening, and then a half an hour cut an extra half an hour in the morning and I just dedicated that. I wouldn't give it away for anything. It was just like, this is my sacred note time. You will not leave the office until you have done all your notes for the afternoon and in the morning. And I gave up income, a lot of income for that, but your sanity is worth more than your income. That's how I looked at it. Like, not everyone can do that. I understand that you need every dollar, but at the same time, sometimes I feel like we are responding to the crushing demand instead of looking at, what do I need to keep doing this? Because I want to keep doing this until I drop dead, pretty much.
Yeah.
Not that bad, but we're our instrument. We need to take care of our instrument, and so you need to think about that. But do you want me to talk? You started out by saying about what's an audit. Do you want me to talk about the different types of audits?
This is such a juicy conversation where we're at, because I feel like,
okay, all right.
I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but like I feel like there's something about the people listening. If we can kind of move through this space of people understanding that this is the core of it, because I do think there's something about understanding that, and then they can come to the training, because I do think there is something about that. Like, if we don't even understand what is happening and what's in the way of us getting our notes done and having our record keeping in place, then no matter what we know about like what an audit is, we're going to keep feeling anxious, right? Like, there is something juicy about that I'm so curious. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you say,
yeah, but I still think that if you have perfect notes, a records request is going to be stressful. And I want to maybe.
Yes. No, let's talk about it. What's the difference between like these different types of records requests, and when does it become an audit, and when does it go from annoyance to you really need to have your liability coverage? Like,
we'll talk about this a lot more at the workshop, but I just want to talk about, just going very generally, there are 3 general categories that I talk about. Number 1, there's a clinical review. This is not actually an audit, but people talk about it all the time. This is when an insurance plan will call you up and say, hey, we want to review your treatment of this person. Can we schedule an interview? And the first thing you should do is say, oh yeah, schedule it for 3 weeks, and then schedule an appointment with me and I'll practice. But this is not an audit. They're basically saying, hey, we've been paying for care for this person, and this can happen for out-of-network providers. You don't realize that, but even if your client is submitting a super bill to a health plan, the plan has the right to say, hey, we want to review your care. And it's a conversation. So this shouldn't be something that we freak out about. It's not going to go back and take money back. They're just about going forward. We need to talk to you about, do we think once a week is something we want to cover? Do we think this person is just seeking personal growth work, or do they really have enough here that we will cover them? So blah, 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 blah. But I don't consider that an audit. It's not an audit. It's just a clinical review. So people put that in the category, and that shouldn't be. A records request then falls into audit falls into 2 categories. One is just a purely administrative one, where if you're a member of a health plan, they want to see that you have everything in the chart that needs to be in the chart. And it really has, you either have it or you don't. You send in a medical record, they will say thumbs up, you have everything in here, or you failed, you had less than a 70%. So they have a lot of like leeway, and fix it. And next time we're going to ask, we'll hope that you went higher. So you're not going to get kicked off the health plan. It's typically a quality improvement thing. So we're panicking again, or you feel like you were singled out. No, they have to do this as part of their quality improvement. It's just administrative. The most common type also in that category is what's called a risk adjustment audit. This is what most of you are receiving if you have received a request for records. Read through the letter and look somewhere on there. It'll probably say risk adjustment. It'll be somewhere in the letter, and it'll probably be underneath the person's name at the bottom. It'll say risk adjustment department, or send your documents to the risk adjustment department. If so, breathe an amazing sigh of relief. It's a statistical review, and you probably don't even need to send the records at all, even though it asks for your records. You can probably send a treatment summary that you write up that's maybe 12 sentences long, and you don't even need to send your record. So you can go, no worries. Also, so the only kind you have to worry about, which are least frequent of all, are what we call claims related. And that would be either, hey, you've submitted a claim and we want your notes before we process it. Or, hey, we've paid on all your claims for this person for a year or maybe longer, and we now want your progress notes to go back and see whether we should have paid those. That's the one that we could talk about clawbacks. And you hear all these things if you go into Facebook groups or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, it makes it sound like everyone's gotten one of these, and people are shutting down their practices right and left because they've gone bankrupt. And unfortunately, these groups, which can be very supportive, also can be like really scary. And if you're in those groups, I don't know what you tell your folk. Just be careful about taking advice from them, or even, just if you get one of those, contact me. I'll walk you through it. But even those can go fine also. So, and the two companies that are doing that the most are Medicare and Optum. So if you work with those companies, you just need to have extra good notes. You just have to have like so awesome notes. And that's something that if you don't currently have, contact me, or I have a webinar all about what should be in your notes. And I'm trying, my new mission in life is trying to prepare people so that in advance the things they didn't tell you, which is what your documentation should look like, what your treatment plans should look like. So if they do reach out to you, you can sleep like a baby because you have great notes, right?
Yeah. I think the other thing that's kind of interesting, and you may not like me saying this part of it, but like some of the people that are talking about like, oh my gosh, they claw back all this money, and it doesn't happen all the time. When it does happen, it's really scary. Some of those things were totally unrelated from any kind of audit. It was their own administrative review. Something happened where they decided that this person didn't actually have insurance or didn't qualify for the health plan. And so I've had several clients where something like there was nothing to do with their notes. There was nothing to do with an audit, and the clawbacks happen. So
well, I would say in most of the cases I've seen a clawback, or for them to like look at you, it's something like you saw the client twice a week for a long time, or you somehow fell outside of the normal. So typically it's not that you did anything wrong, but you did something different, and you kind of showed up on their computers so they want to look closer. And unfortunately, a lot of the times when people have to pay a lot of money back, it's either because their notes are non-existent, their notes suck, or they actually used the wrong billing code, or did something actually wrong. I've seen cases where people have reached out to me and I had to tell them, no, you used the individual therapy code for 2 years for a couple sessions. I'm sorry, or you didn't put the member's name on the client's chart. That like they need to have that on the client chart.
Well, and I think that's going back to the Facebook groups. How many Facebook groups do we see where people are making the recommendation that, when you're seeing couples, you can just bill under the individual?
Yeah, that's
I see that all the time, and people not understanding the complexities of that answer, and that answer is not often sufficient.
Yes. And unfortunately, we're like a fishbowl. We're like, well, I reached out to my colleague and my colleague gave me this advice, so I give that advice to everybody, and this misinformation is passed around. And so, if you're doing multiple sessions a week, if you're doing extended sessions, we don't really have those codes anymore, but if you have an adjustment disorder and you're still 5 years later have an adjustment disorder diagnosis down there, they might reach out to you and say, how come you have 3 years of adjustment disorder? Now, I'm not saying they will. I'm just saying that might increase your chance. For something like Optum, it could be 90837 using that code repeatedly. You're probably a little higher likelihood to using that 60-minute code every single time. And then they're going to look for, well, does your documentation support it? Do all your start and stop times for therapy back that up? That you never once had a client 10 minutes late. You never once had a client, and one person who I was dealing with this week, they looked into his records and found that he had billed for some canceled sessions and missed sessions. So, we hear, oh, they clawed back all this money, but we don't really know what kind of misdeeds these particular therapists might have done. So again.
Yeah, that's not the thing that you're going to share in the Facebook group. Hey, I really messed up. And I was doing insurance fraud. And I have had clients who have reached out to me for coaching and have said, look, I've been doing insurance fraud because it was the only way I knew how to take care of my family. And I don't want to do it anymore. Can you help me get out from under this? And I respect that. But it does happen. It really does happen. But a lot of people can't own that experience, can't own that they've been coloring outside the lines and make a change. It's hard.
Yeah. And sometimes I haven't been overseeing my billing service. I've just told her what days, they just didn't really notice what the insurance plan was or the billing service was coding it as. And, there's just kind of a lack of owning of the billing. And I hear that a lot, well, I don't know what my biller put down for those dates, or I don't know what diagnosis they put down. I'm like, well, you're responsible for the codes and the diagnosis that are put down on every claim. You're responsible for every claim that goes out. You need to know what they're putting down and you need to document. So yeah.
I think can we talk about that? We talked about the documentation, but I think this responsibility part of this is your business. And if you are in network in particular, every single insurance company that you are in network with, you signed a lengthy contract. And that contract often referenced lengthy manuals and lengthy other places. And for a lot of
none of us read.
Nobody read.
I do now. I do, but none of you guys did.
But I think this place of when we're recommending to a new therapist, hey, you want to open your practice and you want to be accessible, and we need more people that take insurance, so go get on all these insurance panels. It's really not always a good idea. At the very least, getting on one insurance panel at a time, understanding the reimbursement, really reading through, understanding, so that even if, yes, let's outsource it, but ultimately you're responsible for the person you hire. You sign the documents that they sign. There's nothing where you go, oh, well, it's
wait. Here's my even scarier piece. Now you have places out there like Headway and Alma and all these third parties. I'm trying to think of some that credential for you. They say, hey, we will Path, I think is one. We will take care of the credentialing. We'll get you on these panels. We'll get you more money. They take care of all the credentialing for you. It's like zippity zooza. I don't have to do it. I'm on an insurance panel. But one thing that I really notice is you never get a copy of your contract. You have no idea what you agreed to. You have no idea any of the terms of your contract, what you can do and can't do in terms of cancellations, what you can bill a client for and not. How do you get off the contract? You have to rely on that third party to take you off the contract, which there has been some issues with that. I have heard where they say, sure, we got you off the contract. You're no longer on the plan. And yes, you are. And you try to call the health plan and the health plan says, oh, well, we don't have a contract with you. If you want to get off, you have to have the third party take you off, and you have no power. So in some ways you can't even, it's bad enough that we don't agree. We don't read our own contracts. But now there's more and more outsourcing of the contracts where we don't even get to see a copy of our contract. And I'm very concerned about this third party thing that's happening.
I'm curious though, if there is an audit or if there was a clawback, would the clawback all come to Alma or Headway, or would it get cycled through to the clinician?
Clinician, yeah.
You're kidding.
Well, the clinician, if it's a risk adjustment, because the risk adjustment audits will come to you, but it may come through, I've seen them already come through Alma and Oscar and things like that, where they basically need to come to you because you have the records, right?
Yeah.
So they're saying, hey, we want the records, blah, 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 blah. If it's a financial thing where they have already paid, I don't think I have seen a lot of clawbacks through those major organizations. I have a feeling that they don't touch those big organizations as much as they touch us little guys. So I don't know about that. I can't really comment on that, but I haven't heard people say, well, I just got a claims related records request through Headway or this or that. But
I'm curious what will happen, because they're also new. It's sort of like, and I know this is like a little bit of an early conversation, but a lot of people signing up with BetterHelp, which wasn't necessarily through insurance companies.
right.
And again, therapists trusting, oh, I'm an employee. I'm not, I'm actually a contractor of this organization.
Right.
This is a big organization, so I can trust them. And now the FCC has come back and said, no, you were selling protected health information. Like the FCC has had really strong words about BetterHelp.
Yeah.
And why could BetterHelp go and sell people's protected health information? Because they had therapists that inadvertently made it a viable business, that we kind of made it okay by being employed by them and not really reading through those contracts. And as those contracts were being read through, the privacy policies were pretty shocking. And then BetterHelp had these crazy attorneys that would go and attack anyone who said anything about their privacy policies. It was wild.
So I would tell people I'm a control freak and I like to do my own billing and I like to be responsible so no one else is effing it up. And I learned by doing myself, and I credential myself all along the way because I learned by that. And also I wanted to see the contracts. And so for me, this is my business. I want to keep very tight control, and I want to make sure that no one is doing things under my name that I don't approve of, or I want to have the contract so I can complain to the company or whatever. So I'm an old school person, and that's probably not the new way. But I think there's something to be said for watching out that you don't give away too much control. And if you do hire somebody like a billing service, watch over them like a hawk. I mean, don't be like, oh, well, I'm sure that they're submitting bills for me. I've had ones where they're like, oh, it seems like they haven't submitted 6 months of bills. And I'm thinking, how did it get to the point where you don't know the answer? You haven't been following. You're just trusting that this person in there is taking care of that. So
I think it's because we as therapists are not taught, just like we're not taught documentation in private practice, we're not taught private practice finances.
Nope.
And I'm going to throw out there that there's a reason that we have not a lot of diversity in the therapeutic community is because of this financial issue. So you end up with a lot of people that have a certain amount of privilege to not look at their finances, to not need to make a certain income. Maybe they have a spouse or they have a trust fund or whatever dynamic it is. And I feel like it's been really beautiful to see more single therapists, to see more therapists that from diverse backgrounds coming in and saying like, no, I actually have to make money. Like, this is actually like my career and my income. This is not a hobby. Like, I remember hearing that even for myself as a married woman when I started my private practice, and people were like, oh, well, you have your husband's income. And I'm like, my husband is out of work all the time. Like, you have no idea.
Well, there's a high number of therapists who have a side gig. I mean, and it may have nothing to do with therapy, but a lot of us work part-time at an agency, or I used to teach resume writing classes on the side, and anything that we can do to bring in money on a regular basis. And then we can dabble in our private practice, which my husband always said, you're always complaining. You either have too many clients knocking on your door or you're not enough. You never were happy with a number over the 35 years that you were in practice. He said, like, you were always panicking one way or the other. Like, you felt too crushed to take on all these people and you felt terrible turning people away. But at the same time, if practice dipped down at all, you were like, oh my God, there's no one in my practice. So, it's hard to be in private practice. You're always worried that it's not going to be good tomorrow, that people are going to go away. Or when people say, oh, I think I'm done with therapy, sometimes you're like, oh my God, I'm going to lose that income.
I think it goes back to that space of we're not often taught how to build in some buffer to know that, like, oh, on average, I need to have about 16 clients per week. I can see a max of 18. I work in the fact that I'm going to have about this many cancellations per year just in setting my fee.
Oh yeah.
Or figuring out what my minimum contracted rate can be. Because
and then if we want to go down a separate rabbit hole, I have a whole side argument about how therapists do not charge for missed sessions, even though they have a missed session policy that most of us do not religiously implement it. And I have figured that out in dollar signs, like how much money are you giving away each year? And one estimate I had was $12,000 if an average therapist doesn't implement their policy, or you have to not implement if your client goes to the hospital or something like that. You're going to have some you have to give away. You don't want them coming in sick. But the number of times that we nice people, I have an article called "The Cost of Being Nice." My estimate is this could be a $12,000 difference a year. Well, that's a lot of money. We don't realize it because it's dribs and drabs, but that's separate from audits. We don't want to go down too much of a rabbit hole there. So if you want
well, let's just for a second, because I actually have some research about this. We did some, we actually started doing what is that called? Survey of therapists. It's pretty juicy what we came up with. And we'll talk about two pieces really quickly, because they both relate to why we get anxious about audits, in my humble opinion. One is that on average, just in running over on sessions, therapists are working an extra 3.5 clinical weeks per year unpaid. 3.5 weeks unpaid clinical work, just by that. I'm running over 10 hours or 10 minutes or 7 minutes or 15 minutes, this many times a week, what have you. We actually had somebody who even responded where I was like, did you understand the question? They said they were running over an hour per client. So we threw those out. Like, we threw out any like anomalies where we're like, something's clearly wrong. I think they misunderstood the question, but I don't think they did. And then when we looked at the numbers in particular, in terms of that charging, let me pull up so I don't misspeak it or what have you. It was right at that number. It was actually, it's 3.6 late cancellations or no shows per week, right? Which, if you were charging full fee, that's $25,000 in lost profits based on what on average therapists were saying, how many clients they saw per year, how many weeks they worked per year. And that even if they did a flat fee, right? A flat fee that wasn't their full fee, that was still $8,600 a year if they charged like $50 or something like that. So it was this really interesting thing of, if you're doing this, you're looking around and going, oh, this is normal, but is it sustainable? It's not.
No. And I argue that it's bad parenting, basically. I mean, if I told my kid, you need to be in bed every night at 10, and then every night I let them stay up till 12, what is the message I'm sending? No, that I had that policy and I had you sign it at the beginning, but really I don't enforce it at all. So it's meaningless. So why are we teaching our clients that the things we say are meaningless? While
we sit in therapy and tell them how important boundaries are.
Yeah.
And tell them what they should be saying, and saying no to all the people around them. But then
we let them put anything in front of their personal care too. Like, oh, I have gotten this one a lot. Oh, my hairdresser can only see me at 3:00 and I have an appointment with you at 3:00. So can we reschedule? Well, sure, we can reschedule, but I need to charge you for the missed time. If you're going to put your hairdresser in front of me, that's fine. That's your decision, but you need to pay for the time. Oh, well, never mind then. I'll cancel with hairdresser. Okay. I think we just need to put it out there that yes, you get to make that decision, but you also need to,
This is the option. I can't believe 45 minutes has just like flown by.
Yeah.
Holy moly. For those of you who are listening, like, thank you, Barbara, for this conversation. This was so juicy. I always enjoy talking to you. It's just such a highlight. And I appreciate you taking out the time to share with everybody here your wisdom. And I hope you guys let us know what you think about this. What is your takeaway? Go do a review or something like that. Tell us what you think. And check us out, zennyme.com. If you just click on the free trainings, you'll see the option to go and register. Hopefully, fingers crossed, if we can find a way.
And if you can't get in for some reason, I have a training on my website, which is available, which is a pre-recorded kind of training. So you can go to theinsurancemaze.com.
She has amazing trainings. They are for pay, but go and check them out. Every one of them is absolutely worth their weight in gold. It is worth I don't know, it's like $60 or $100, $150, depending on what the trainings are. They're all.
None of them are over $50, so they're all low fee. Yeah.
Check it out, y'all. Any last words that you want to say, Barbara?
This is such a big, juicy topic, and I hope you'll find out more about this, because there's a lot more to say. We barely scratched the surface. We got so interested in so many other topics, but there's a lot to say about notes. There's a lot to say about treatment plans, and there's a lot to say about audits. And this is such an important. We tend to go to all these clinical webinars and workshops, and this is a part that is so sorely under focused for all of us. We need to own the part of us that is a business owner. And it's really okay to be a business owner. And it's not something we should be ashamed of. It's something we should get good at, because keeping our doors open, doing a good job on the business side allows us to be the wonderful therapists that we are.
Yes. I love it. All right. Thank you so much, Barbara.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks so much for joining Barbara Griswold and I today. I hope that you'll be able to join us in person. Go and check out zennyme.com/free to register for that training. You can also access over 15 hours of free training. Some of them even include CEs, APA, and NBCC, that you can check that out. And know that there is support for you. You deserve to be well taken care of, so you can keep doing this great work with clients. Until next time, y'all.